Welcome, everybody. My name is Haresh Singhani. This is Conversations with Haresh. We'll be talking to people of varied backgrounds, covering various topics. I'm very excited to be able to share these with you. The goal is to increase curiosity and empathy amongst all of us to help us grow professionally and personally at all levels. And of course, we also want to make sure that this is fun. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to having you.
All right, so David, we know a little bit about already because he bought the drinks. That's what I do best. Yeah, so all that long mumbo jumbo about banking was not the specialty.
Yeah, I'm here for a good time.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, you haven't met yet. Jamie runs a real estate technology company, a real estate investment company, and he was kind enough to join us on the panel today. So Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself briefly and what your team and company do?
Sure. I'll make it pretty quick. It was an itch that I needed to scratch before we existed. And so we have a company that models every single family detached home. And then our clients come to us and say, I have X amount of capital, and this is what I'm trying to achieve. And it usually falls into, I want to have as much cash flow as possible. I want as much comprehensive return as possible, which effectively means how much leverage can a property handle while still not relying on its owner, or how much tax efficient cash flow can it generate? Meaning, can I get it to simultaneously produce cash profits and tax losses for if you are in a high tax bracket? And it was something that I had a problem with. And so I started doing it for myself, and then a friend asked me to do it for them, and one thing led to another, and we've been doing it for about 7 years. But the easiest way to explain it is that we are software and a service. We let our clients, if any or all of you played Monopoly when you were growing up, we effectively... Oh, is it? Hello? Oh, I was talking into it. So we just let our clients effectively play adult Monopoly. They don't have to do anything. They get monthly distributions. It's deeded in their own name or in an LLC that they own, but they get all the benefits without any of the hassle. That's about as fast as I've ever explained what our company does. When I started the company, I remember having a true elevator pitch where I got on at the 11th floor and somebody asked what we did. And by the time we hit the ground floor, I was just apologizing. So hopefully that gave you a good example or good understanding of what we do. If any of you have any questions after the fact or after the discussion, I'm happy to chat with anybody.
All right. Thanks for the overview. And can we hear about your background before you got into this?
Oh, yeah. I'll give you the high level. It's a very zigzagged background. I've talked to a couple of you already, but my degree, so I went to UW. I'm a double dog, so I went to UW twice. Undergrad, I spent the first 3 years doing the sciences, and then my dad, who's an orthopedic surgeon, talked me out of going into medicine. So my degree, I simultaneously studied Japanese, Hindi, and Italian. My degree is in Italian. Then if you've been to Canlis, I put myself through undergrad valeting at Canlis, which was a blast. And I made very good money for a college student. I thought I was a billionaire. But I worked for about 6 months after I graduated, and then I went down to Ecuador, and I lived there until my bank account got to a very concerning level. And then I came up here, and I went back to UW to get an MBA. And I worked in corporate banking and then financial institutions banking in New York and San Francisco and Vancouver and Toronto. And in Toronto, I had the luxury of working in financial institutions banking, which was very formulaic. And I had a great boss who said, if you're done at 10:30 in the morning, I don't pay you hourly, go home. And that corresponded to a year that I was priced out of the markets that I understood how to invest in, and I knew I was going to have money coming in. And so I started building our company. As my wife tells it, she was getting her master's when we were there, and I went from the office. I stopped. I got 3 screens and a computer, and I propped them up on our kitchen table, started building the company. As soon as she graduated, she was not a fan of Toronto. Amazing food, but we were there for 2 years, and the first year was the worst winter in 50 years. The second winter was worse than the first. And so we moved back here 14 days after she graduated, into one of our investment properties, and I started building the company. That was 2015.
All right. So David, do you want to give us a little bit better idea about your background outside of the bank?
Yeah, so I grew up around here, so grew up on Mercer Island, middle school, high school there, went to USC, played football at USC, part of like the 01 to 06 championship team, so I had a really good career there. Pete Carroll was my coach. I don't know if you guys are football fans, but
Never heard of it.
so then I got drafted to the Seahawks. I was with the Seahawks from 06 to 08. They cut me, and I went kind of on you call it a zigzag, but I went to San Diego, went to the Niners, went to the Saints, then back with the Seahawks for my fourth year. And then they cut me for the last time. I think they cut me 4 times. It was like, I still do charity work for them. And it's like, gosh, you guys literally cut me so many times. And it's funny because like no one tells a doctor unless you've done malpractice, like all of a sudden you can't be a doctor anymore. It's like, that's why football is like, oh, they tap you on the shoulder and then like all of a sudden no one calls you. So you're like, okay, I gotta do something else. Wanted to make money because I had a mortgage and I was a marketing major and they don't pay you anything in marketing. So I was like, I wanted to get into finance. Private wealth wasn't that interesting because it was like, well, who do you know? Who do you want to prospect? Give me a list. And I was like, well, I don't know anything. I'm 26 and like didn't really have any financial knowledge. So random. I mean, Ash, I love the Tokyo story. So then I was like, okay, I had a mentor and he was a hedge fund guy. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I'd love to go to New York, be like a trader or something. He's like, you can't. Not that I guess I was too old, but didn't have like whatever MIT, Stanford on my resume. So he was like, "You're not going to fit in that box. Why don't you try Asia?" So I went to Asia on like a trip. Interviewed with, and this is 09, so the world just blew up. So I met with every single bank in Tokyo, every single bank in Hong Kong. Everybody said no, and then randomly a guy Merrill Lynch who loved the San Diego Chargers was like, "Oh, we're looking for a young trader." So interviewed. I think I was playing video games while interviewing, and I crushed it.
That's a secret.
Yeah, that's a secret. I was like relaxed, playing video games, probably had a few drinks, and they're like, "We love you." So anyway, so I interviewed in Tokyo. They hired me as like a 3-month contract guy to pass all my tests, and ended up spending 7 years in Tokyo, 3 with Merrill. Kind of.
You got a tab.
Yeah, I know. I was like, we need to like hang out. Probably have a lot of cool places and stories. Then I was JP Morgan in 2013 in Tokyo still, was a sales trader there with portfolio trading also. And then I had 2 kids there. My wife was like, let's go home. So I went to New York for a year, traded on their international sales trading desk, so trading LATAM, Europe, inbound, outbound, Asia business, and then Canada. And then my dad got sick, so we were like, okay, we've been away for 8 years, let's move home. He has Alzheimer's, so the dementia stuff's super interesting, Ash. He passed last year. So came home, tried to help my mom 6 years ago, joined the private bank, and then I've been doing that ever since. And I fell in love with golf as well.
Oh, no.
Wow.
That happened recently.
Oh, no.
I know. It's amazing.
Any connections with real estate?
So I've been investing in Seattle real estate since 2006. So I bought at the highs at the NFL, which was like, but then I bought at the lows in 09. And so I started Kirkman Property Solutions. I thought I was going to go into real estate and like build this portfolio, but I realized banks don't lend to you unless you make money. So that was a big problem for me. And I didn't want to syndicate deals and like do that thing. So I literally, when I went to Japan, I was investing just in multifamilies all throughout the 2010s. It's my true passion. I love vacation rentals. So we've kind of built a portfolio over the last 12 years, but I just don't have the stomach to start a real estate company like Jamie. I got 3 young kids, so super passionate about it.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have bought or sold a home in the last 2 or 3 years? Oh, that's a lot. Wow. Okay. How many of you enjoyed that experience? Oh, well, you're biased. You probably use your own platform, right?
Doesn't pay the fees.
Oh, I see.
It's free.
So, real estate is a big domain, right? And that's one of the reasons I and many of us are fascinated by the domain, and it's very consequential in people's lives. And so when we were planning this event, AI is being talked about everywhere in all domains. And so then we were like trying to map which domains should we talk about. So real estate is the domain that we picked for today. And then there are other domains we'll talk about in other events. But I think there's about 6 million transactions a year.
Around that.
About that, single family homes that exchange hands every year. Do you know how many of them involve an agent, a human agent, versus kind of amongst family and stuff?
Are you saying like non-agent transactions, like
like
I sell to my brother or sister?
They wouldn't even get listed.
Oh, I think it's a fraction of a percent or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say 90.
I see. So obviously, then a big chunk of them are. We have a leader. A big chunk of them are, done using brokerage services and so on, right? So, but most of us don't seem to enjoy the experience we have with human agents for whatever reason, right? That's not to say that the individual humans that are involved in the transactions aren't doing a good job. But maybe the system has some issues. So, Jamie, we had talked about this a little bit earlier. You kind of break down the transaction or the real estate function into sub functions, right? And there were like 3 or 4 different areas. So maybe you want to, if you want to give us that, then we'll kind of pick out some of those areas.
Yeah. So when Harash and I first started talking about this, it got my mind thinking about the impact of AI on real estate. And if you break it down into the areas of failure, there's kind of 4 places. There is marketing, that's why in boom years and bust years, you see the number of agents go up and go down because it's not easy to work as an agent when you are in a trough market like we are now. And when you are in a peak market where houses are selling themselves, it's a 60-hour online course and a high school GED equivalent education. And then you get to basically practice law. So it's a very strange little world. So marketing to find people that are willing to, buy and sell with you as the agent or like that. And then transaction itself, which is usually where a lot of failure does happen because a lawyer who took a 60-hour course is probably not a great lawyer. And so there's a lot of failure there. And then communication, which usually, again, that's the biggest, for me, I'm a service person. I love good service. I'm a sucker for good service. And so that's usually where you see a lot of people get angry at a transaction. And then after the fact, it's just ownership. And I think in those quadrants, that's where AI is probably going to be focused, largely because those are the points of failure that I think AI has this unique ability to be both a wise sage and a very dumb intern, depending on how you use it. And so I think AI, if used appropriately, can do what an intern would do, but do it with the skill of a sage. And then you can rely on what I think, if anybody's had good real estate transactions, a lot of it is tied to somebody being empathetic and thoughtful and detail-oriented. And some of that can be solved with AI, and some of that can be solved with just good interpersonal skills. But I think when AI takes the hard parts out, the success is going to be on who has those other attributes.
I see.
I mean, I don't know if I agree. Just because I'm not trying to the point. I just feel like the friction in real estate is one, liquidity, right? So yeah, if AI can build some sort of liquidity pool where I can hit a bid on any bid on my house and I can be out of it in 2 weeks, I'd love that. So that's a no. You can't sell a house quickly. And then 2, agents is just such an insider's market. So if it's a hot market and there's lots of bids, whatever, you don't really know how you can win that bidding war. And I just right now I don't see how AI solves for that. I think AI is a great tool for prospecting, finding new clients, getting more data around like what areas are hot or what like average rents are going if you're an investor. But it's like the AI needs to take a leap forward where it's gonna like obviously it's gonna like negotiate a contract for me while I'm trying to outbid someone. I don't see the application yet, other than you can get more data. I get more data in the house I'm buying, I get more history, I get more trends because I have more inputs. But like the hard part is winning the deal, getting the right price. Like, you know, an agent lists a house for 800. Like, what is the actual like low that they'll take? Well, they take 6, and a lot of times you don't want to lowball anybody because the agent's like, well, it's going to be offensive, and like, well, how do they know that someone won't hit my bid? So like, I think the lack of liquidity is like my biggest issue, and like the non-transparent nature that agents operate in. They just have this like stranglehold over the market, and I don't know. I'd love to see it change. I just don't know how AI is going to be the application for that.
So is it that just the access to data? You think that's the constraint? Because whatever the agent or a human does, right, once they see all the data, the insiders, right? Do you fundamentally think that a machine can never do that, or you think that
the machine will give us the data? That's the one thing they'll give us. Like the machine will give us the data, and I think AI will give us more data on the things that we're buying. But the transaction part of it, like winning with the right bid or being able to sell at the right price, like I just don't know how AI can predict that or like force either a buyer or a seller to come up or down based on data that they're finding. So because it's such an emotional thing, especially if it's single family homes with sellers. Like if they had more data, that means okay, this bid does look real because the AI told me, or is the agent just came like, well, you should hold off for a higher bid.
I see. I mean, if you're a buyer, right, typically you lump all the emotions together into a price that you're willing to pay, right?
Right.
And then you, so it's either acceptable to the seller or not, or it might beat other buyers or not, right?
Right.
And so what I'm trying to understand is what is it that is happening that you think will always require a human element or a human actor as opposed to just giving it to a machine? And obviously you'll have to keep confidential data confidential to each party.
Yeah, I just feel like there's lack of transparency of where a seller's low is, right? And I think there's pushback if you're using an agent on how low you can bid for a property. And I just feel like I don't know if AI can find that happy price where it's like, okay, it's an $800,000 house. Like, where is the band of acceptability of a bid?
So how does a human help right now?
Well, I think a human helps because they'll talk to the agent, and the agent will be like, well, they'll probably go here. And like, if you're a seller, you're not going to put that information out there. Like, oh yeah, they'll put motivated seller, sure. But it's not like, oh, my low is 700. So it's up to the agent to find like what the actual price it can transact at.
The other side's not going to tell you, right? If there's like acting in their own interest as to what price they're willing to accept as their lowest.
Right, they won't. I mean, it's up to the agents to like find that price and pull it out of the seller's agent.
So I guess, Jamie, when you're doing this algorithmically, how does it work? So when you're putting valuations on homes and then you're trying to decide whether to buy or not.
I get to cheat a little bit because what David was explaining is the inherent problem with the emotion tied to buying a primary residence. So for us, it's a math problem. It's very easy. That's part of the beauty of why I built the company that I built, is because I know if I am confident in what I can rent it for, and I know what my debt cost is, I know what the highest price I'm willing to pay for is. And I can structure an offer, depending on the market conditions, with an escalation clause in it. Basically saying, if you don't have another buyer, if you're offering a property at 800, and you don't have another buyer, I'll put in an offer at 600, and I'll put an escalation clause in saying I'm willing to go up to this amount, find another buyer, and that's what the market price is. But the price of that property is only what the person willing to buy it for is. And so if the only thing that I would, or I guess one of the things that I would bring to your attention is I think you were thinking about it with your seller hat or your buyer hat on, maybe your investor buyer hat on. But if you're thinking about it from your seller hat on, you don't want somebody to know what the lowest amount you're willing to accept is,
no
right?
way.
So I think, but I don't.
I wasn't a buyer. I don't want that. I want all of that.
So I think you and I are saying similar things, which is that AI can solve for data conditions, improved efficiency, but there's that empathetic component that an agent is going to say, hey, I have some information. I feel like right now this is what the market looks like. I know some other properties are going to be coming online in that area. They're going to make you feel comfortable, and then you're going to be assuaged into saying, all right, I can buy it for that price. And if it falls in the same bandwidth as whatever the agent working with the seller is talking about, then you got yourself a deal. And that's what those agents' jobs really is at the end of the day, is finding the lowest price that you have to pay while still keeping the seller happy. And I don't think AI is going to be able to solve that. Liquidity, I think, will get solved to some degree, but that's more of a, I don't think AI is the first problem that needs to be solved there, because that's a regulatory problem that is probably bigger. Like if I wanted to become a lender to, everybody in this room, there is a large amount of hurdles that I'd have to go through. I don't think AI is going to be able to solve that before the regulatory situation's fixed.
Right. Well, I think like even as a seller with liquidity conversation going on, it's like, okay, I list my house and there's nobody that wants to bid any price. Like I'm assuming like there's got to be someone out there that has a price that will show it to you, but they won't show you that price because they think, oh, it's too low. Oh, it's this. So like there's this like hesitancy to transact because they don't want to offend the seller and like, oh, it's way too low. I just feel like, and again, I don't know if AI can fix that, right? This liquidity within real estate, which is I think the biggest issue, and then just information in general. So I don't know. I don't see tons of applications like solving the hardest part of real estate in my mind.
I see. By the way, feel free to ask questions anytime, and we're going to do it towards the end, but I think we have a small enough crowd we can take questions anytime.
Actually, I have a question for the crowd. Like, raise your hand if you've ever had a bad real estate transaction. Like one that you were like, this really pissed me off. What was bad about it?
The bad about it was that we had an escalation clause, and our agent just, and I'm talking about years ago, and the agent just said that keep escalating. While, of course, we got the house because we just ended up, just escalating all the time. But what we felt was that the agent should have told us to, okay, like this is the limit, like this is the upper limit. I don't think we should go beyond it versus getting the house at any cost, because if you end up escalating at every escalation, you'll definitely get the house. But I think that was something that was frustrating.
So did you think you overpaid? Is that what the issue was?
Yes, I think so at the time.
So it goes to that you didn't get empathetic counsel. Like I say that jokingly, but like real estate agents are attorneys. They are allowed to craft legal documents that are binding. You didn't have, and attorneys are your counsel with an EL at the end. So it seems like you got bad counsel.
Yes, yeah, and we were first-time home buyers then, so you definitely want an agent whom you can kind of trust that, okay, the agent can tell you, okay, this is a good house, and I think this is what the value or around the value you should pay, or maybe you should, but it shouldn't be the way that, let's just keep escalating. At the time, I think that's what we felt, that even if we would have, stopped at, 25,000 less or something, we might have still gotten the house, or we may not have, but then we wouldn't have to pay, maybe that 25,000 or whatsoever the amount was back then. So, that was kind of a frustrating experience.
Yeah, that's not uncommon actually, and I think we've all seen it. Well, I've seen it a lot with people. We don't really do primary residences, so I don't really see a lot of like the buyer's remorse. But my friends that have bought in the last couple of years have had that buyer's remorse where they feel like they're like, I didn't get good, counsel. They didn't tell me what to expect from this or that, or they told me to waive certain conditions that I wish I hadn't have waived because I found out that I have a sewer that I need to replace for $30,000. And I do think some of that can be solved with AI, but I think it's a tiny fraction. I think a lot of it is AI is going to even the playing field where you're going to have smarter individuals, and the individuals that shouldn't be effectively real estate attorneys will probably not get to play. But I do think in terms of like the efficiency, because I look at things through the lens of like pre-Redfin and after Redfin. Redfin was such a big change in how people operated in real estate. Because before, if you guys, I don't know who bought a home, I did not buy a home pre-Redfin. But back in the day, I think like real estate agents, they had to like get a printout and they would read 50 pages of what's available on the market, and then they would plot it out, and they would get their atlas map that sat in the pocket behind their driver's seat, and they'd drive you around every weekend. Like Redfin now is amazing because most agents get their clients will get like an email or a text saying, here's a property that I want to go see, and it's just the Redfin link. So I think if you look at that and say, all right, what else can technology do to improve? And I think AI improves some of that background stuff, right? I think that at the end of the day, though, your experience will probably become less frequent, but I think it's always going to be something where like your experience, not to over focus on you, but your experience is not uncommon, and I think that's where a lot of people get really mad. That, and I was curious if anybody had a bad experience. I had one where I bought a property. I flew in from Toronto, bought a property. I told the agent how much I had to invest. I said, not to overshare, but I said I have $250,000. I want to buy this. This was doable at the time, but I have $250,000. I want to buy a property, like a 2-bedroom property condo in Seattle, for about $500,000. And they started showing me. I was in for 2 days. They showed me for an entire day. They started with property that was $495, and we ended the day looking at $800,000 properties. And it was infuriating. And they won. I bought a property that was over what I wanted to spend, and then we closed and they disappeared. And then 6 months later, when Zillow said, the property has gone up in value, this is what really got me was they emailed me and said, hey, we did it. We did a great job. I was infuriated. So I think that's the other thing that when I speak about communication, a big part of it is that. Like there's good agents that I'm sure that, hopefully you've all had experiences where you get agents that check in on you every once in a while, and you get into the house that you bought and they've stocked the pantry with everything that you'd want, or something good. I think those agents will survive and thrive with the assistance of AI, because sometimes those people that are really empathetic and have a really high EQ are absolutely garbage when it comes to helping you with the actual transaction. They're just great at listening and making you feel good. And I think if they can rely on AI to help you, and they have the same information, or at least can prompt the information correctly so that you have a good dialogue and a good understanding, I think AI will help a lot. I don't think it will help David find the lowest price possible, but I think it would probably help you coach.
I mean, I think also, one of the big friction points is like also inspections. Like you need to make sure like your house isn't gonna have that $30,000 bill, right? And like how do you solve for that? That's another like huge friction point in real estate, is like whether the house is in good shape. And I guess you could have like a AI bot that like flies around and can like look at things. That's not there yet. But I mean, that's another one. It's like, okay, that's also like, you don't want to obviously buy a property that you're going to get crushed on repairs. So like, okay, then it can't solve that either. So again, yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, good point. I actually think AI can help the seller in education. I have to turn it on as well. Is it on? Yes. Oh, so I think that AI can help the buyer in education.
Yeah.
Because I ran into those problems, and we purchased the house a time ago, and we got the inspection reports for certain areas of the infrastructure of the property. We got 2 of them, but we have fucking no clue what to look for.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. Right? So I really believe the AI could help. If I had AI at that point in time, that could educate me on specific things what it is you look for. I really believe that can help a buyer understand what to look for, because the inspections report are very technical.
Yeah.
Personally.
Usually it's like your agent saying, "Oh, I think items 15 and 18 are important." You're like, but there's like 60 other items that you've said, right? And you're just like, what about these other ones that are like not okay? It's like, oh, we don't want to ask for that. It's like, well, why not? Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's really
I think we got. Go ahead, Dan, and then Guillaume.
Yeah, sorry, I stole the microphone.
Yeah.
I think, to me, I think, so many of these tech companies, Zillow, Redfin, there's a whole long list, all were started with this goal in mind of changing the real estate transaction, making it better for the consumer, the buyer. And they've all failed horribly at that and quickly pivoted to helping you find a house or a property, right? I think there's lots of value in being able to get an estimate for your home and see what potentially the algorithm says it's worth, and then what Redfin says it's worth. It gives you an idea, but will AI change that dynamic? Maybe is AI the thing that will change the home buying transaction? And I think, Dave, your point is a good one, and JB, you called it out. How do we address the emotion component, right? Investment properties is one thing, but the emotion of the family wanting that home and being attached to it and driving that price to maybe some place it wouldn't otherwise be. So the question is AI going to address that bigger issue of the actual transaction, which is the same as it was 25 years ago?
I will jump in and just say I don't think AI addresses it at all, because I think it's just a fundamental flaw of like how humans are built.
Yeah.
We are emotional, and our emotion drives us to do inappropriate things or illogical things, right? And I don't think AI's job would ever be to eliminate that, but I think AI could solve where you have, again, good counsel, whether it's your brother-in-law or your mom or your agent, saying, are you sure that this house is worth X? But then the non-emotional components, like the sewer scope or like knowing how to read an inspection report, absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to, will it eliminate your real estate agent? I don't know if it'll eliminate it. I think what it will do is it will allow you to bring more information to the conversation with them, where you can say, hey, this report that I got from xyz.coz, that tells me that this report says that I should really pay attention to these things. If the sewer is a problem, how do I navigate that? I'm sure at some point, 100 years from now, I'll be made a fool of. But at this point in time, I think the biggest thing is getting somebody comfortable with the transaction and helping them understand the pitfalls, and then helping the transaction smoothly go by, because the rule of the job of an agent on both sides of that transaction is to serve their client as well as possible. So that means get the buyers, if the buyer is looking for a specific price to get the house that they want, try to get that. The seller, if the seller needs to get X amount so that they can move on, get that. And then find that interim. And I don't think that friction is going to go away with AI. I think the emotional component stays.
So I think Jamie's spot on. There's a general truism in AI that AI doesn't replace workers. Workers with AI replace workers without AI, right? And so it's going to be real estate agents that know how to use the technology. Just like, as you mentioned earlier, the real estate agent figured out how to use Redfin, and Zillow, and that sort of thing before the rest of them did better than the ones that didn't, right? And you're exactly right. I don't call my real estate agent now and say, hey, I'm interested in looking for something, let me know what you got. I go on Redfin and I look for it and I say, hey, can I go look at this property? Mm-hmm. And I don't think we want real estate. We don't want to remove that human emotion from real estate, right? Like, at least not from the single family dwelling sort of real estate transactions. Commercial real estate, investment real estate, yeah, that's a little easier to automate and people plug some numbers into an algorithm, and you very quickly, you instead of it taking 3 weeks to close a deal, you can do it in 30 minutes because the algorithms sort out they know your bottom that you're willing to go. But for single family dwellings, like it is a huge emotional issue. To your point, like you pay more for a house than you were originally willing to spend because your emotions get caught up in it, and that's part of how that whole system works. We don't want that to go away, or real estate agents to be making a lot less money.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to bring maybe a slightly different lens with respect to AI. A long time ago, I built an algorithm to estimate the value of Craigslist rental posting, right? This is something we have a lot of structured data. You have a posted price for a rental, and you know how long it's been on the market. So you know if it was priced too low, it spends very little time on the market. If it's priced too high, it was a long time, maybe it got down, eventually gets a rental. And that really showed me the importance of how good are your photos. How good are your photos? Because if the photos are terrible, no one's going to show up, and it's going to take a long time for rent. And for the people that show up there, if they all show up at the same time as the photos are great, then they're just going to get rented within a couple of hours. And I was reading recently that Airbnb is coaching their listing to take better photos because they know what gets rented and what doesn't. They were using AI to do it to say, hey, I'm going to assess your photos, I'm going to create a caption for you, and you're going to get more revenue because you have a better listing. So my question is this: if you are in a situation where most people do their shopping or they're pre-sorting on their phone from like a perspective where they're looking at a property that has some amount of quality photos on it, how much opportunity do you have in just helping people have better photos or create renderings? Like generative AI makes you a photo of your home without furniture in it. You can add furnitures in it, or you can change the decor, or maybe you can say to a buyer, here's what it would look like if you had the kitchen that you want. So that you can go into a transaction knowing, is this the one that I want or not, or is this just terribly pictured because they didn't pay for a stager or not? How do you help people find a better home outside of how much a specific seller invested in photos or staging or all of this marketing? Like, how can we make it so that a buyer sees a potential and a seller represents its potential effectively so that you have more opportunities to go to, like, this house looks terrible, I'm not even going to go sell it. Like, I don't know. I've had a conversation with my wife. I was like, hey, look, I think this one has potential. She's like, it looks like me. I was like, oh, this could have been something. I'll never know. So I'm just curious what your experience has been in this like first impression, and also the potential for AI for helping people range this is ugly to like, no, this has potential.
I'll jump in because so this is something that we just instituted about 6 months ago, where we stopped just as part of our service for our clients. When we acquire a property, it's professionally photographed because we have run the numbers and it's better for them. It runs faster, it runs for a better number. I think because we do it so frequently, we understood the math. But I can see where AI, not just in that, but in a bunch of different things, would be able to make recommendations for you. And I don't know if that comes at the agent level or at the personal level, where they say, oh, you're looking to sell, what should I think about? And AI can say, well, the statistics say that if you take professional photography, the photography should cost $300 to $400, but you may sell, the likelihood that you'll sell for $4,000 to $5,000 extra dollars, that's a good investment. And if it has a catalog of those recommendations, it will reduce the friction. I can see the AI helping in that fashion, but I'm not totally convinced that agents will buy into it. Like, I don't know who the trigger is. I don't know if, like, Redfin for a period was paying for pictures. And I think it's because of the same thing. Like, they're motivated. That's the fundamental flaw with my personal opinion is the fundamental flaw with real estate agents is like they're incentivized to get you spend more if you're a buyer. Like, they have a counter incentive to get you a good deal in theory. Whereas sellers is totally opposite. So I guess that was a rambling answer. I do think AI will be able to do that over time, but I don't know what company adopts it, and I don't think it will be ubiquitous.
It sounds like a horizontal problem of digital twin, right? If you actually can create a digital twin of a house easily, then all the houses would have it, and then all the buyers can see those, right? Once you list it.
Well, there is one other thing that just before you jump in, there's one other thing, which is when you were saying that, so I'm a dual citizen, U.S. Canadian citizen, and in Canada, I don't know if this rule still holds, but it was the case several years ago, is that they do not allow digital manipulation of real estate photos for sellers. So you cannot put fake furniture in. You cannot put fake green grass in. You can't even put fisheye lenses to make a room, which is actually, I'm supportive of all of this. I think good photography is great. Digitally enhancing is, it's a pet peeve of fake grass.
But the beholder can do it, right? I mean, the person
Oh,
who looks at it
yeah.
can say, what would you
Yeah,
like
if you want to buy it,
Yeah.
you can if you're
imagine
good,
that.
yeah, you can take
There's a
it.
new market.
There's a new market.
Yeah, so it's just going to be Redfin and Zillow adopting that kind of software. You can like design the kitchen. Like that's who's going to adopt it first, implement it. So it's like in my mind, like that's great, and then maybe it's less cost to the seller. You don't have to stage. But it's like when are we going to get to the crux of the problem? Like, we still haven't reduced agent fees. So now we can see every house in the world right at the tip of our finger. Yes, I know agent fees have reduced a little, but they're still clipping 2% on every sale, but doing probably half the work and then the contract work. And then now you're going to be able to like actually see what a remodeled house looks like, and you don't have to stage it, and yet the agent still clips 2% minimum.
Agents
are crazy to me.
Agents are magical. I will, no offense to anybody who has an agent in their family or friends, they're magical because they are so good at telling you why they should get what they get. And part of the reason we started a brokerage is because we started off as a SaaS company and we could not find agents that had the care for the relationship, because we're in the relationship, because we manage the acquisition, all of the cash management, all of the operation, all the way through to when somebody says, I don't want to be in real estate anymore, which may be decades. We just couldn't find somebody who was willing to do what we wanted them to do for that relationship. But I remember having these battles before we existed where when I was buying, the buyer's agent was like, oh, well, you're not even paying me. Like if you buy this house for $600,000, you pay $600,000. I'm getting paid by the seller. Don't even worry about it. Absolute hogwash. But then if you're a seller, I remember being on the other side of this where they were like, well, if I don't, put 2.5%, nobody will show this listing. And I think that also is absolute hogwash. Like it's just bizarre. But I think going to the point that was made earlier, Redfin, Zillow, they've all tried to do this. And one of the big problems is that the EQ portion of it is what seems to keep, it's the failure point. If you don't have EQ in the transaction, people feel like they're flying without a net, like they're not doing it well. And so that's where, if you guys remember, Redfin started, and they were like, an agent shouldn't also be the one that negotiates, shouldn't also be the one that runs escrow, shouldn't also be the one that does X, Y, and Z. And so they started off with this idea of we can reduce the transaction costs by making everybody an expert in their one little part. And then people got so mad because they didn't have a source. They were just getting handed from person to person to person. I think that EQ part is forever going to be, just because, again, I lump myself into this, but like, we're just poorly designed. We need like somebody to tell us that we're doing a good job. And that this is like a good choice.
I think some good points. I guess as a consumer, I feel like a revolutionary. I have a dream. And my dream is to be able to list a house similar to being a third-party seller on Amazon. Okay? And I want that entire experience. People can come see my house, but that's how I want to sell my house. And then if I'm a buyer, I want to see all those houses, then buy one. And if he wants to bid on one, I can see his number. He can beat my number. If there's an escalation clause, it doesn't leak out to the other side. It only goes to the platform.
But how is that different from like the iBuyers? Because you can't do that.
It's not iBuyers. It's like the institution, the firm buys your house and they give you cash for homes type of discount of 20, 30%, and you can't afford to sell your home.
Right.
95% and 9% of sellers can't afford that discount. But I want to find a retail buyer, which I can do through third-party seller on Amazon.
How do you make money?
I know, I'm just a consumer. I won't sell my house. Amazon can make money, or him can make money. Right?
We looked at it from the other side because I
So, by the way, and maybe I'm and as a consumer, I'm like, oh, I'm okay with an agent. I can go to the agent for the human element, but I want that efficiency or that type of platform to be able to sell my house. And I'm just saying Amazon third-party selling experience because a lot of you know what that is, right? It probably won't be Amazon. Maybe it will be Amazon, but that's what I want. And I think the industry probably has some lobbying, right, to prevent that. Maybe because then it'll be hard to justify those fees. Right. But there's one as a consumer, I'm willing to pay the fee if you do one thing for me, even if you use Amazon-like platform, which is help me reduce the risk of the transaction. Then I'll pay you 3%. Actually, I'll pay you 3% happily. Right, which is what iBuyer was trying to do.
Right.
But then they have to charge 15%.
Right. They gave you certainty in exchange for a very big discount.
And so that didn't work. So there has to be a more affordable way. But anyway, that's my appeal, wish, whatever you want to call it. So if there are bright and motivated people, we can discuss how to make it happen. But Ash, you had a question.
You want to go first?
Oh, you have questions. Oh. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So the topic with him gonna remind me many AI algorithms can also process visual data. I think that could play a critical role on the specificational rental market. So I was thinking maybe the AI can be really helpful to help the Airbnb host to shaping their pricing strategy or predicting the pricing trending in local. So I remember David mentioned you have a vacation rental in your portfolio. How do you determine your pricing?
Well, I use Vacasa for my vacation rentals, and they have some sort of algorithm already, and like they say it's good. But I set a minimum price, and I took it off. I was like, okay, it's not renting at my minimum price. Stick it back in the algorithm, right? And then it rented. It's a waterfront home in Chelan. It rented for $225. So the algorithm is broken, which is like cheap. That $225 a night is cheaper than like the cheapest Campbell's room in Chelan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Chelan. But I mean, so the algorithm doesn't really work either. So I definitely think there's definitely efficiencies within pricing for your home, like based on trends, based on what's available. And I don't think at least Vacasa's algorithm is looking at what's pricing on Airbnb or VRBO. So yes, there's definitely applications to that in my opinion.
Yeah, I just think visual can really make a big difference.
Yeah.
When you user browsing your houses.
I've never bought a house. I have lived in Manhattan, Upper East Side. I grew up in like the second poorest state in India. Then moved to Tokyo. We'll talk about it. I lived in Akasaka and Roppongi for the most part. Pretty pretty close to you.
Yeah, Akasaka.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. So and we moved here. We're still renting a place in the Braver, right? Right down, up, whatever. Yeah, it's like up. So my wife started talking about buying a house. So we started looking at it. So 3 things came out. So coming from the AI side, there are 3 types of data, right? One is kind of already structured data. price, blah, 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 etc. You can gather from many places. Then there are unstructured data. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but he was talking about, like, there are photos and stuff like that she was talking about, and then you could grab that. I'm just curious, like, as first-time buyers, right? We're like nomads, right? First-time buyers. We were actually planning to buy a house in Bonn because we're wine people, right? But now maybe Sammamish or somewhere here. I want to know, is it possible to scrape the data from Facebook, Instagram, and a bunch of other places and tell me a lot more about that specific area? How cool is that place? Is the view is good? And like really present me succinctly about the house that I'm trying to buy, or the area or the specific place. Is that possible today? Or is there enough data? Is there enough data to scrape? And is there enough? I know the foundational models are there to kind of understand the context, but is it available, or is it legal? Because those just 1 second. So those would be like very interesting for me. Like, okay, we want to build a house. Okay, fine. We want to build a house that's kind of we want to just build our own house, right? For example, like pricing and all that stuff is fine, but is that data, emotional data, the data that the agent cannot provide, right? Is that available today? Is it possible to construct it?
So most of the sites that you were talking about have anti-scraping policies. So they're pretty good at keeping you off or blacklisting you, blacklisting your IP. I think people have tried to kind of home in on what you were talking about, like when Redfin acquired a company called WalkScore, and then they started showing school ratings. That's effectively what they're trying to do, is like, here's how great it is to live here. You can walk to your grocery store in 10 minutes, and the schools are a 7 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or whatever it is. But it's a great idea. I don't know quite how you do it. Plus the speed at which those environments change.
Okay, I was actually talking a little bit more detailed. For example, let's say I'm trying to buy a home in, I don't know the area, we'll be there for 10 months, Sammamish, looking east, for example. If there are 5 different homes out there and somebody can scrape their Instagram feed and tell me what the views are and give me more intelligence about, should I buy a house looking east or should I buy a house looking west?
I think this problem may be solved using a car. I think that's the opportunity. And I think that's the opportunity because you get more data, right? So like you want multiple points of data, and I think that's maybe what AI can do, is give you those data points. So I know by the way, we're running overtime. I know people are very engaged. So we'll do maybe a couple more questions, and then, by the way, we have the room and Roxanne's available to help you longer after this as well. So, but we'll take a couple more questions and then.
So on that note, I was going to say, so when we moved, we actually moved from a community that I didn't want to be in to it. It was all about community for me. So I literally we went to Mercer Island, found a house, but then I went to the local elementary school, talked to the lady at the front desk, and wanted to see what they were like and how they greeted me as an Indian in their community, and I did not like it. So you cannot get that through AI, that emotional connection that you get with the community in that area. So that was one of the most important things for me.
Can you guess if you can scrape the Instagram feed?
I mean,
You scrape next door, probably.
Madrona moms, scrape that.
I think each person has a different look on what they want for a community, and it really has to be an emotional and thing that ties to what you want from I wanted it for my kids and me, so I feel like AI cannot do that. So that's the one thing that scares me with AI.
So, and we're a little bit over time, so we're gonna do a wrap. that's okay, unless somebody has a very quick question.
One last
I just
question.
have a,
Yeah.
I was just wondering if I could share a positive agent. You know, I just
He works at Microsoft.
I mean, I came in here thinking like, where's Ryan here? We're gonna put him out of a job and everything. But I realized listening actually where AI fits and where, like, to David's point, like where an agent might fit, and even for your, the Amazon kind of thing, the individual transaction itself might have that empathetic factor somewhere. But let me tell you my story, and you can conclude what you want. So I had the opposite experience of Ruchi, which is I was out escalated, and we were looking for a house for like. We're one of these people who don't buy for a long time. It took like 3 or 4 years to find the right dream home. So when we found it, we wrote the letters. The guy had a lot of Beatles stuff. I said, I worked at Abbey Road Studios. I wrote everything. He had a textbook. I said, I taught that course. Reading books. My wife's a great cook. Everything. We wrote all of that. And actually, both the agents told that the sellers kind of wanted to sell the house to us because we were a family and the other person didn't show as much interest. But they escalated us. So they came back to us, and we had better closing sort of, dates and, cash or whatever it is. And they said, like, if you can match the escalation value, we'll sell the house to you. So which means, like, whatever the number that they would have sold it for. So we had to stretch a little bit and buy that. And so we really got our dream house. And this is about, exactly before the interest rates, like, soared through the roof. So I want to throw that little gloat. But there's a quota to this. And our agent she took me up and down, like, 50 to 100 homes, and she earned every dime of that commission, I must say. And last week, I was in India, and our house got broken into, and the first person who came was my agent and her dad, who came to fix the doors. So there are certain things that I guess I lucked out that I never realized that I did, till I sat here and listened to, you guys talk about where, the human element is. So, and this person is not my relative.
Just to be a little bit flippant, but objective, what you've been doing is paying for a friend. You need a friend. Yes. And so,
A good agent is a friend.
Exactly.
they should not need to be one in one person. You don't need them to
If
be in
you're
one
going to
person.
have one transaction in your life or two, I think having it shepherded through a human being is not such a bad thing.
No, I mean, of course, whatever works for the user, right? Ultimately, and if you're willing to, I mean, it looks like you're very happy, so that's great.
I
right?
didn't realize how happy I was till I came here. I should be really happy. I got to
I
look
see.
forward now and say, like, yes.
Our job is done.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that'll help us share some parting thoughts. So Jamie, do you want to kind of leave the audience with something?
Yeah, I will just say this has been really fun. The real estate market is like a fickle, weird little thing. But for those of you that are feeling like the pressure, if you have tried to buy in the last bit, or you're like, I'm gonna try to buy, but I'm gonna wait. Like, all I can say is it can be frustrating no matter when you do it. When real estate, when rates were low, it was really frustrating because all of the houses were getting bought. Rates are high, it's frustrating because everything's too expensive. But the EQ thing, and going to your point about the meeting the community and saying, this is not the community I want to be in, all of that does come back to, I mean, as Harish said, it like having a friend, but also a friend that is very, very skilled at what they do and is there not transactionally, but supportively to help you achieve what you're trying to do. So like we do this for investors. I am not, when somebody comes and says, will you help me buy a primary residence? I'm not that person. Not because I don't absolutely want them to get the right house, but I think that's not a skill set. There's so many people that are so much better at it than me. So I think the EQ thing, I disagree. You can buy your friend.
Okay. A little bit of controversy.
Well, lasting words. I think I have a dream like yours, Resh. Like, I want to live in a world where I'm in control, and I don't know if any of you ever tried to sell your house by yourself and you put like for sale by owner, it's the worst experience ever because all you have is agents come like, well, I can sell your house better. But I live in a world where I have control, right? Like I have control when I can sell it and at the price I can sell it at. Like that was wonderful. And I think, I don't know if Zillow tried to do it, but there's an opportunity there where there's market making in single family homes and it's a live market. And, you know, I work in stocks and bonds and like everything is liquid. If I want to sell my stock, I can. I can dump it whenever I want. I don't have to wait 30, 40 days. So I think that the time is going to shrink as far as when you accept an offer to when it closes. So that I think the AI can help with that. I just think we're probably a longer horizon before we have this liquidity dream where we can just like buy and sell houses and be done in 10 days. So I'll help you with your dream, Ramesh.
Yeah. Thank you. I guess just to clarify, in my dream, agents have a place.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's a lot more freer choice than it may be today, right? So people who get value out of agents can choose to work with them, and then people who feel that they can they don't need the EQ or the empathy element. They feel like they have a handle on things, right? Investors maybe, and they can do it that way. But it's a huge domain. I guess it's very consequential. We're not going to solve it, certainly not today. But thanks to Jamie and David for humoring us on the panel, and thanks to all of you for being here. We'll do more events on other domains and AI and so on. But like I mentioned, Roxanne's here for a few more minutes. So, and the food, I think we have some more food. But I really appreciate everybody making the time for this. And I think I finally feel like we're back into practice after the pandemic. So have a good evening.
Oh, one more thing. We have cups.
Oh, yes.
The rest of a competition. My cups are in the box. They're tumblers. Take them home. We're counting. Make sure you guys take more of the JP Morgan cups.
They might be nicer, but they're different. We're not really competing.
Back to this debate.
Thank you and good night.